Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm going to be talking about what is PCI DSS, and this is just a beginner's guide that is friendly. Why does it? I want to talk about why does it even matter if you're a small business or a large business. And at the end of it, I want to ask you to like and subscribe if you like this content and if you want to learn more about cybersecurity. Now, who needs to care about PCI DSS? It's anyone who accepts, processes, stores, or transmits credit card data. So if you're a merchant, if you're online, physical stores, restaurants, that kind of thing. If you submit, Amazon's a good example. If you use them, they have to follow PCI DSS requirements because they take credit card processing. Now, and there's also payment gateways and processors and service providers such as hosting companies, call centers, etc. You get a call, let's say you're past due on your card payment. You get a call, say, hey, if you make a credit card payment now to get your car up to date, then we can get you up to date. Well, you make a payment, they take a credit card payment, they have to follow PCI DSS guidelines as well. What happens if you ignore PCI DSS requirements? Well, you could get fined up to $500,000 per month. That is a lot of money. Would you rather pay me to go over your network for 200,000 and make sure it's secured, or would you pay $500,000 per month until you do get it secured and then go from there? You can also lose the ability to accept credit cards as well if it's too big of a fine or if you've done it multiple times. There's uh, that's not for us consultants to determine. It's that would be dealt with the credit card processors, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and so on. Now, Target back in 2013 was fined $18 million. And then British Airways back in 2018 was fined $20 million. That's a lot of money. Would you would you like to get your things secured? Now, PCI DSS is just the bare minimum requirements. Let's say, for example, you need a password. Great, you put a password. Use cat for a password. Does it meet the password requirements for having a password? Yes. But as a company, I would want you to be more up there. But as long as you have a password, you meet the requirements. But just make sure that this is just the minimum. Anything above that is more welcomed in the PCI DSS atmosphere. Now, PCI DSS compromises of a minimum set of requirements for protecting data may be enhanced by additional controls and practices to further mitigate the risk. There are some limitations, such as if the requirements contained in the standard conflict with the country, state, or local laws. Who created PCI DSS? It was created by Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex, and JCB. It was created in 2004 by these brands, now managed by the PCI DSS standards, and the current version is now 4.0. The one that we've been using for the longest time is 3.2.1. Now, these are just the overview of the 12 requirements. I'm going to go over each one individually a little bit on this video, and then I'll go in more in depth in other videos. Right now, I would talk about firewall, antiviruses, unique IDs, regular testing, and so on. Requirement 1 deals with installation, and maintaining the network security controls. On the old 3.2.1 version, it was called firewalls. You want to use a proper firewall to segment credit card data network from the guest Wi-Fi network. So you have a wall on your that would block any entry to the unauthorized entry to the credit card data environment, which is considered the CDE. You want to secure it as much as possible. Technically, you don't want to put it on the same network. that your guest Wi-Fi or any other network Wi-Fi is that's in your company. And now they could have, preferably it needs to be on its own network separate from the current network. Like say VLANs, for example, you want to put VLAN 2 for the CDE environment and VLAN 3 for your customer service department, VLAN 4 for whatever. So the bad example would be putting your guest Wi-Fi and your payment terminal on the same network, which will be an automatic fail, by the way. So if I could gain access to your credit card data environment, which is information that belongs to the customer, and grab that just by logging in on your guest Wi-Fi, that's an automatic fail. Do not use requirement 2. Do not use vendor supplied defaults. That's with anything really. I know they have this as a requirement for PCI DSS, but a good strategy is never use defaults on anything. Your routers, your switches, your computer, your phone, etc., your email. A good example would be a router default of admin. Yes, you type admin for the username and admin for the password, you'll log in. But then once you log in, change it, because once you do, if you don't change it, it's easier to hackers will use default passwords to try to log into systems all the time. Now, in this case, a hacker used a tool called MicroTick, which is a router credential hacker apparently that stole data from over 400 companies because they used default passwords. That's why. Now, you want to protect your stored card data. Ideally, you do not want to store data, but if you have to, for either for whatever reason, companies' reasons or lawyers or whatnot, never store the at least never store the CVV or the full magnetic strip after authorization. As for your credit card information, that long set of numbers, you only can show the first 4 or the last 4 would be the basic. Tokenization is the process of replacing sensitive data with non-sensitive unique identifiers. So let's say you give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a token for that could be ABCDFG3. And you're like, what the heck is this? And you don't know because I basically tokenized it. Now, a bad one, you have an Excel file pulled up and you're storing the full personal information of the credit card on the computer, laptop, tablet, phone, whatever. That is a big no-no. It needs to be deleted right away once you type it in and after the authorization goes through. Requirement 4, encrypt transmission over public networks. Now, you must use TLS 1.2 or higher. If you're using TLS 1.1 and lower, you fail. TLS is just a cryptographic protocol that secures communication over the network by providing encryption, authentication, and integrity. Encryption means you're scrambling up the information. Authentication means you're authenticating that this is the right one data from point A to point B. And integrity, it's kind of like hashing. You want to, once you have it installed, you want to verify the hash is the same hash on the where you got it from. Now, a bad example is old POS systems using CLS version 3, which is HTTP, which is immediate failure. Now, SSL is a protocol that creates an encryption connection between a web browser to protect sensitive data. Example is HTTPS. That's why you see www.https:// whatever. Now, I took this little snapshot of like YouTube, for example. If you click on that little gear icon, it'll say connection is secure. Well, great. If you click on that connection is secure, you can actually get the certificate. Requirement 5, use and regularly update antivirus. Any antivirus is good. Here, you can use Windows Defender with auto updates is acceptable. I've heard Windows Defender is just as good as any antivirus out there as well because they've gotten really good at it. All it needs to be is active, it must be updated, and it must be generating logs. But active means you have an active subscription, and updated means it's updating when there's a patch, it updates. If they're every monthly, whatnot. Generating logs is it's creating logs in case if a hacker does come in, then they can trace those logs and find out how they got in and go from there. Requirement 6. This one's develop and maintain secured systems. Patch within 30 days for critical vulnerabilities. That's probably why Windows always patches at least once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month. Do a scan every 30 days. Make sure if there is patches, patch them up, unless you can't patch them up, because there are some software that needs to access it that's legacy. But if you can't patch it and it creates a vulnerability, you need a backup plan on what to do to cover that vulnerability. As long as you have that vulnerability covered and you have documentation of why you need it open, like let's say port 80, you need port 80 open for a reason, or another port that's unsecured, document it. Explain what your backup protocol is, how you, if that fails, how are you going to secure the network if nothing does go through. An example of a breach would be the Equifax breach back in 2017 due to an unpatched Apache struts. Requirements 7 and 8, I combined these two together. Basically, 7 is restrict access based on business need to know. Requirement 8, use unique IDs. Now, need to know principle means kind of like what I said earlier about the firewall thing. Have access to the CDE. Only certain people should have access to it if they need to know the information. If your program needs to know the information, give them access to it. If your program or person does not need the information, block them. How do you do that? By giving them unique IDs. You have a unique ID that says, hey, this guy is allowed to have access, but this guy isn't. Now, you don't want to have shared accounts, shared IDs. So you don't want to create one ID and then give it to your whole team, because maybe you have access to something that they don't need access to. That's a big no-no. That's a red flag. As long as everybody has their unique ID, you can actually block. You can set a parameter that says block everyone except this ID. Boom, done. The cashier should not have access to yesterday's full card numbers. What that means is you shouldn't have it. Once you enter in the card, the middle section of numbers should be deleted or hashed at the very least and not known. You can keep the first 4 or the last 4. That's it. You want to restrict physical access. Cameras, badges, visitor logs, locks, doors, police in the hallway, key, whatnot. Because you don't want someone just to walk in the building and just walk right into that CDE environment and take all that credit card information with a thumb drive. That would be a big no. Requirement 10, track and monitor all access to the CDE environment. Keep your logs at least 1 year. 3 months needs to be immediately available. What that means is you can use like Iron Mountain to store your data, your logs and stuff if you need to, or separate hard drive at a different location is preferable. But technically you don't want to store your logs at the same place that your CDE is at. You want to save it at a different location. However, you want the last 3 months to be readily available just in case if there's a breach. So technically to play the 3 months at the current location and the whole year somewhere else. The tool example, which is you can use, these are free tools, which is Waza and Graylog. Requirement 11, regular testing, which are scans and pen testing. Approved scanning vendor. Quarterly means every 3 months, actually. You want to scan your CDE network for vulnerabilities. You want to do a pen testing annually. You don't want to use your internal people to scan or pen test. You want to use external people, companies, to pen test. Because if you use your internal employees, you're creating a interest. Those employees might be like afraid of their position to be losing it, so they want to say, yeah, everything's at orky dory, everything's greenlit and ready to go. When in reality, it's not. This is why I use third-party vendors. Small merchants can use TrustWave, Qualys, or security metrics. Qualys is also a basically just us scanning for vulnerabilities, for certain vulnerabilities, and you can set it up to do certain types of vulnerability scanning. Just remember the two key concepts: quarterly antivirus scans by approved scanning vendors. The antivirus needs to be actively running and scanning constantly every day. Scans by an approved scanning vendor, which is your ASV, and you need an annual penetration test. Requirement 12: maintain a security policy. Must include security awareness training every 12 months, free template. You can get a free template from the PCIstandards.org called Security Awareness Program. Security awareness is you update your employees on a yearly basis. When you work for a company, you always get that email, hey, have this security training done. Basically, they're trying to keep up with this. Security training means, hey, if someone asks you, hey, can you walk me into the door over there? That's a no. If you have someone standing behind you while you're working, make sure that someone is someone you know, not some random guy just looking at your computer trying to get information. When you get a call, be wary of people asking for certain information. That's why you said, okay, customers always there's some people that complain that says, wow, you already know me, I call in every day. Well, we need to verify you to keep other people's data secured. But just security training, just make sure you have an awareness training program in place, and basically that's enough for this. Now, how hard is it really? SAQ types explained. Self assessed questionnaire. It can be completely outsourced. So a SAC A is you own a business, but your credit card information is be taken completely from a separate source. You only have to answer 22 questions. The SAC A EP, which is partially outsourced, you have to answer even more questions. So it basically, let's say you have an iframe and you take payments. Now you have to make sure that the iframe is secured. So you're adding even more questions to do. A SAC D is everyone else. If you touch anybody who touches credit card data. So you hand me your card, I'll type in your card number and submit enter. I have to answer to a SAC D to make sure I'm securing your information. 90% of small YouTube businesses can be filed with a SAC A with a few clicks. Basically, a SAC A, because your credit card processing is outsourced. You're using Shopify to take your payments because you're not taking the payments. Shopify is taking it. So you just have to answer 22 questions. Easiest way to become compliant in 2025: use Stripe, Square, PayPal, or Shopify payments. They're automatically tokenized, their tokenization, and you're good to go. You could use redirect or iframes to take the payment, but you never touch the card data. You could become compliant. Fill a SAC A, which is only 15 minutes, 22 questions, right? Quarterly scan if needed, but most SAC A's don't need it, and then you're done. Boom. Keep it simple. I like the call to action about smashing that like button if you like my videos, or comment your biggest PCI DSS fear below. So let's say you have a fear of, I don't know, cats. Put down cats take credit cards. I'm afraid of them. Subscribe and hit that bell icon animation as well, and give me a follow. Other than that we're all done with the basic PCI DSS overview. This is just an overview. This is not deeping too far deep. And if you're interested, I'll create more videos like this and I'll see you next time.